This week, Google uncovers the catacombs, the year of faith comes to a close, and we get one cardinal's take on the Vatican's relationship with China. Hello and welcome to Vatican Connections. Today we're going to look at how the Pope celebrated the Feast of the Presentation of Mary and a whole bunch of other things. This week brought another motu proprio from Pope Francis, and it was aimed at getting the Vatican's financial system in order. This time, Pope Francis clarified the roles of the President, Board of Directors, and Director of the Financial Information Authority. Now, Father Federico Lombardi, the Vatican spokesperson, said there were no revolutionary changes, but it was necessary to make sure the authority's statutes match the task it was assigned a month ago. The Vatican also announced it has hired a team from Ernst & Young to carry out verification and consultation on the administrative and economic activities of the office that runs Vatican City-State. And we have word of another document that will be released November 26th. The Vatican will release Pope Francis's first Apostolic Exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, or the Joy of the Gospel. This exhortation is expected to take into account the Synod on the New Evangelization that was held at the Vatican in October 2012. But last June, Pope Francis told the Ordinary Council of the Synod of Bishops that he would not be working from their draft. He told the Synod Council that he planned to write an exhortation on evangelization in general and make reference to the Synod, but put it in a wider framework. A formal presentation will be made on Sunday, October 24th during the Mass for the close of the Year of Faith. We also learned that Pope Francis timed the release of this exhortation specifically to be the closing document for the Year of Faith and not to eclipse the encyclical Light of Faith. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, will meet Pope Francis on December 2nd. One topic that could be discussed: relations between the Jewish state and the Vatican, the overall situation in the Middle East, and it is expected that President Netanyahu and Pope Francis could discuss the details of a papal visit to the Holy Land. Israeli President Shimon Peres has already invited the Pope to visit, and this week the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Fuad Tual, told reporters Pope Francis will visit, but, quote, "we know not the day or the month." Google has changed the way we look up addresses and locations with its popular Street View feature. Now Google has teamed up with the Vatican and opened new doors. Thanks to this partnership between the Holy See and the internet giant, you can now visit the catacombs of St. Priscilla in Rome without leaving your chair. In a press conference this week, Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi told reporters that laser technology was used to restore the burial sites in the catacombs, and the process uncovered frescoes of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead and Saints Peter and Paul accompanying Jesus into the afterlife. Now, on top of that, the Cardinal announced almost the entire complex of the catacombs of St. Priscilla can be viewed on Google. When you're using Street View, a new Look Inside feature appears on the screen and takes internet surfers down below. If you still prefer to see the real thing, the catacombs of St. Priscilla are located under the Basilica of St. Sylvester, close to Rome's Villa Ada. And an update on a story we brought you recently: the Bishop of Limburg, Germany, was granted a leave of absence while German Bishops' Conference looked into expenses for the renovation of his home and office, and German authorities investigated allegations that he had perjured himself in court. This week, it was reported Bishop Franz Peter Thebarts von Eltz has agreed to pay a fine of 20,000 euros, or about $27,000, rather than contest the charges. He remains on leave from the diocese. And as the people of the Philippines try to pick up the pieces after Typhoon Haiyan, the Vatican announced it is sending help. Pope Francis already made a donation of over $100,000 to relief efforts through the Church's charity arm Cor Unum. This Sunday, at the closing Mass for the Year of Faith, a collection will be taken up for Typhoon Haiyan relief efforts. Pope Francis will decide exactly how the donations will be distributed. The Church has several charities and aid organizations that could deliver the money or could use that money to help provide much-needed help. Now, according to the Vatican officials, they can't actually recall the last time a collection was taken up at a papal Mass. There are some issues in the life of the Church that make headlines and then disappear. Then there are a few issues that remain constant, things that the Church has to deal with continuously and quietly in hopes of making progress. The situation of the Church in China is one of those. Cardinal Zen, the retired Archbishop of Hong Kong, was in Rome recently, and he spoke to Catholic News Service about the current state of affairs and what is needed to bring the Church and the Chinese authorities closer.
La libertà religiosa in Cina evidentemente dipende dal governo cinese, dalla Chiesa in Cina e anche dalla Santa Sede. La Chiesa è divisa, no? Dunque c'è la cosiddetta la comunità clandestina e la comunità che accetta il controllo del governo. Sotto questa continua oppressione, la parte clandestina evidentemente soffre molto. E quella parte che si sottomette al governo, naturalmente non è che sia tutta una, Ci sono di quelli che pongono ancora una certa resistenza nonostante questa sottomissione, altri che sopportano questa oppressione, questo controllo, ma l'accettano in certa misura. Purtroppo c'è anche qualcuno che è opportunista, che vuol dire che ha accettato abbastanza cordialmente questa collaborazione col governo. Vuol dire che fa più interessi suoi e del governo che non della Chiesa. La Santa Sede ha da fare delle scelte, no? Le scelte sarebbe tra quella di essere chiaro e quella di accettare il compromesso, no? Purtroppo la gente vede molto compromesso. C'è l'ombra dell'Ostpolitik. La comunità, diciamo, underground, soffrono, sentono di essere un po' abbandonata. Le azioni che vengono da Roma non sono in loro favore, specialmente per esempio molti vescovi muoiono e non si danno successori. Ora, secondo me questa è una politica sbagliata per cui la Chiesa sta diventando sempre più debole. E evidentemente il Santo Padre ha intervenuto, ha cambiato personale anche, no? Un cinese come segretario della congregazione e poi il nuovo prefetto della congregazione dell'evangelizzazione dei popoli, che è uno che ha lavorato a Hong Kong per la Chiesa in Cina e che perciò capiscono meglio la situazione. Ora il nuovo Papa non si è ancora pronunciato è evidentemente un uomo di governo molto saggio, sta ascoltando, sta studiando. Il nuovo segretario di Stato la nomina è stata salutata da tutti come una scelta ottima, ma le trattative non dipendono da una parte, ma da tutte e due le parti, no? Speriamo che in Cina capiti qualcosa di cambio e che vengano a una più sincera conversazione con la Santa Sede, e allora si può sperare in qualche cosa.
Time to look at the resignations and nominations that happened this week. In Austria, Bishop Franz Lachner moves from Graz-Seckau, where he was an auxiliary, to Salzburg, and he becomes archbishop. Another appointment happened in Argentina. Father Pedro Javier Torres becomes auxiliary bishop of Córdoba. Among other things, he was rector and formator at the major seminary. Now, this continues a trend we're seeing with Pope Francis elevating priests in Argentina to the episcopate instead of reshuffling other dioceses. Fort Worth, Texas has a new bishop. Monsignor Michael Olson was, until just now, rector of Holy Trinity Seminary in Irving, Texas. He becomes Bishop of Fort Worth, succeeding Bishop Kevin Vaughn, who moved to Orange County in September 2012. And there's an Italian appointment turning heads. Pope Francis is moving the Secretary General of the Italian Episcopal Conference, Monsignor Mariano Crociata, to the Diocese of Latina Terracina Sese Peverino. It's a diocese in the province of Rome that covers just over 1,300 kilometers, and it's home to about 320,000 Catholics. Now, it's fascinating for two reasons. First, the Pope appoints the executive committees of the Italian Bishops' Conference. And second, Latina Terracina Sese Peverino, one of the longest names around, is also one of the oldest dioceses we have. It's an amalgamation of several smaller dioceses that are so old we don't have any information about who the bishops were. There are a handful of dioceses like this just around Rome. The other thing to note, the last few secretary generals of the Italian Conference went on to positions where they would inevitably become cardinals. So with this move, Pope Francis seems to be showing that he won't hand out red hats just because it's always been done that way, but he will recognize the hard work of worthy prelates in a suitable way.
Al termine della Costituzione sulla Chiesa, il Concilio Vaticano II ci ha lasciato una meditazione bellissima su Maria Santissima. Ricordo soltanto le espressioni che si riferiscono al mistero che celebriamo oggi. L'Immacolata Vergine, preservata immune da ogni macchia di colpa originale, finito il corso della sua vita terrena, fu assunta alla gloria celeste col suo corpo e la sua anima, e dal Signore esaltata come la Regina dell'universo.
And it's time to look at the Pope's agenda for the week to see who he met and where he's been. On Monday, Pope Francis met with the head of the International Labour Organization, Mr. Guy Ryder. They spoke about the welfare of workers, especially migrant workers. The Pope spoke about his concerns about human trafficking. Mr. Ryder said both men are concerned with promoting decent work in the world. Now, Wednesday was the general audience at St. Peter's, and Catholic News Service has this look at the Pope's catechesis.
Anche il Papa si confessa ogni 15 giorni, perché il Papa anche è un peccatore. E il confessore sente le cose che io gli dico, mi consiglia e mi perdona, perché tutti abbiamo bisogno di questo perdono. A volte capita di sentire qualcuno che sostiene di confessarsi direttamente con Dio. Sì, come dicevo prima, Dio ti ascolta sempre, ma nel sacramento della riconciliazione manda un fratello a portarti il perdono, la sicurezza del perdono a nome della Chiesa.
On Thursday, Pope Francis had a 2-hour closed-door meeting with the patriarchs and major archbishops of Eastern Catholic churches. They were in Rome for the plenary assembly of the Congregation for Eastern Churches. After the private meeting with the patriarchs and major archbishops, Pope Francis met with the full assembly of the congregation. He told them Christians around the world can look to Christians in the Middle East to learn of the patience and hard work that goes into ecumenical and interreligious dialogue. He also called on all Christians to pray for peace in the Middle East. He said prayer disarms the foolish and generates dialogue where there is conflict. In the afternoon on Thursday, he visited a Camaldolese monastery in Rome. He celebrated Vespers with the cloistered nuns there, and this visit was meant to mark the Feast of the Presentation of Mary, a day traditionally dedicated to contemplative religious orders. Also on Thursday, Pope Francis found time to bless a new mosaic at St. Peter's. It's a mosaic of a young Filipino saint, Pedro Calungsod. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle celebrated Mass with the Filipino community of Rome just before the blessing of the mosaic, which is located under the crypt of St. Peter's Basilica. And finally, on Sunday, the Pope was scheduled to preside at the closing Mass for the Year of Faith. Vatican Connections is interactive. Send us your questions or comments by Facebook, Twitter, email, or post. Via email, send comments to info@saltandlighttv.org. And by post, send letters to 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, Canada. We mentioned earlier that Google has partnered with the Vatican to put some of the catacombs on Google Maps. So our Roman profile this week is a look at just what lies beneath Roman streets.
The city of Rome, and one of the reasons everyone loves to come to the city of Rome, is that the past is so present in Rome, that the past is touchable. But one of the things I think that is not always so evident when you go to the Colosseum or you go to the Forum, you see the past all laid out for you. But actually, what Rome shows us is the past in layers, so that we see an early past and a slightly later past and a slightly later past, all layered on top of one another, kind of like an onion. And as archaeologists, what we do is we crack open the onion and we peel back the layers. And the first layers we peel back are the most recent ones. And as we get down into the onion, we get to the lowest ones. And where we are right here on the Chilean Hill, in the Church of San Giovanni in Paolo, we actually get to literally walk through all these layers. So when we walk down these stairs, we will walk into a 2nd century AD rich, posh house. And as we go up, we will go up through the centuries, and we will come up just on top of our head is where the actual floor of the 5th century AD basilica is. So we go through 3 centuries of time, and we get to see all these levels as they're superimposed on one another and as they interact with each other. Because the other thing you can see in Rome is how people responded to their own past. And what is amazing about the Church of San Giovanni in Paolo is you see Christians actually responding to their own past, maybe inventing that past, reverencing that past. So this church is deliberately and very carefully and at great expense built on top of a series of Roman houses. These houses were visited even at the time the church was built, all through the Middle Ages, and we can see this in the archaeological record. We can actually see the past being carefully curated, almost like an ancient archaeological park. And this, only in Rome can you get these layers of the past. We've always known that Christianity grew up in families, and you read the letters of Paul, and the letters of Paul are directed to family members who gathered around them, small Christian groups. What is interesting and what we know now is how long this continued even after Christianity became a legal religion. So I would say really for a century, after Constantine, there is still this emphasis on the family group, that neighborhood churches probably still are meeting in houses, that basilicas that are used for daily use, if you like, or Sunday use, they grew up very slowly, even in Rome. So it really takes about almost a century for real Christian building to get going within the city. I'm not talking about burial. That happens pretty fast. But within the city itself, it's a long process. And the home really remains, I would argue, the center of Christianity for much longer than we had previously thought.
That's it for Vatican Connections this week. Join us next time as we turn to look towards the start of Advent and the start of a new liturgical year. From everyone here, thanks for watching.